This video will focus on the key features of Australian government as part of Lesson 1 in the Year 10 Civics and Citizenship course. Particular focus of this presentation will be the concept of democracy, as well as Australia's foundation in the Westminster System of Parliament. Westminster System of Parliament. We'll be taking a look at the role of government in Australia, as well as Australia's federal system and how that operates in practice. So let's get into it. First off, we'll be taking a look at democracy and the Westminster system. So democracy is a concept in which we have a system of government where the people have the power to determine how they will be ruled or managed. And that's a really important concept because that really differentiates us between many different authoritarian governments. Australia is a representative democracy, which means we elect representatives to make laws on our behalf. And that can be at a federal level, a state level, or a local level, which we'll go into more detail about later on in this video. Australia can also be called a liberal democracy, which really means a system that aims to protect individual rights and freedoms. So, for example, we do have a right to free speech and freedom of assembly, for example. One of the examples of those rights is the March for Justice, which took place in the middle of March in 2021. A liberal democracy also places limits on the level of government control or interference in the government. So protecting rights and limiting government, which is the main part of liberal democracy. Another key concept which we'll take a look at is the Westminster system of government, which actually originated in the United Kingdom. And since we were a colony of the United Kingdom when the UK originally settled here, it was only natural that we took on certain aspects of that parliamentary system. There are two main features of the Westminster system. First is a parliament. This parliament consists of two chambers. It's also known as a bicameral system, which is a word you might remember from previous years in civics. So those two chambers or houses are elected by people to make laws on their behalf. So in Australia, we have the House of Representatives and the Senate at a federal level. The second key aspect of the Westminster system is a sovereign, such as a king, queen, or a governor general, which represents the king or the queen, to act as a head of state and hold various powers, including being required to give final approval to all laws being made by Parliament. And in Australia, we call that royal assent. Okay, so that's it for our two main concepts, looking at democracy and the Westminster system. We're going to take a look at key features of the Australian government, really an introduction into what the Australian government looks like and the role of government in general. So, key roles of the government in Australia include the creation of systems, structures, and laws designed to ensure that all members of society can live together in a united, safe, and peaceful manner. It's probably one of the main roles of government. Second is to make laws that reflect the prevailing view and moral standards held by most Australians. Now, this is something which is a particular sticking point because it is, we have every chance that you might disagree with a law that the government has put in place. But because they're elected by a majority of people in the country, it stands to reason that most of the laws created by Parliament reflect the moral standards of the community. And if they don't, then they'll be elected out of government. Third role is to ensure that all Australians are provided with access to basic services, including healthcare, education, roads, public transport, and utilities such as water, electricity, and internet connection. This can come in many different forms, including welfare payments, disability payments, the pension. It might even be the provision of services like hospitals, schools, public transport, which is really important because some people in Australia can't actually access those basic services themselves, so they require government assistance. Fourth role of government, fourth main role, is to support all Australians in maintaining a reasonable standard of living. And you can see how roles 3 and 4 kind of overlap there a little bit. In Australia, we have the parliamentary system of government, and our laws are created by parliaments. A parliament is a group or assembly who have been elected by the people to make laws on their behalf, and a parliament needs to perform a variety of tasks, including making new laws and altering existing laws so they reflect the views and values of the majority of people and benefit society, really like we mentioned before, discussing and debating matters that affect voters, examining problems that exist within society, and reviewing perceived injustices in the law. So Parliament, when it's sitting, will do each of these things on a daily basis. Looking a little bit deeper into Australia's system, we have what is called a federal system of government, which means our nation has been divided into states, 6 states, each of which has their own parliament and who is responsible for making laws for the residents of that state. We also have a central or a federal parliament, which has the power to make laws for the entire country, and that's 2 houses, House of Representatives and the Senate. There are also 3 territories which have their own elected parliament, the Northern Territory, the ACT, and offshore on Norfolk Island. Each state and territory also has local governments, which provide services for a local community, and this is better expressed by this table here. So we can see the 3 levels of government. The main level, the level with the most power, is the Commonwealth or the federal government level. Next we have the state level, and finally we have the local. Representatives are elected to each of the federal, state and territory parliaments, as well as local councils, so that all Australians have someone to represent them at each level of government. Parliaments and councils make laws, and the governments put these laws into action. That's a little concept known as the separation of powers, which will be the subject of lesson 2 in this series. Each level of government provides different services to Australians, and sometimes these services can overlap. And in that case, it's a really interesting discussion about whose laws are actually more important or apply more in that case. So that's it for this introductory video.